Hello again, I'm Tim Schmidt and welcome to Volume 1 of Concealed Carry Basics. This video is called Ultra Deep Concealment Techniques. Now what do I mean by ultra deep concealment? Well, I consider this to be a concealment method that has a very low chance of accidental discovery. Now why would a person ever want to utilize a form of ultra deep concealment? Well, I can think of a few reasons. One, work environment. You may work at a place where the carrying of a concealed weapon may scare some of your coworkers. Now personally, I think this is crazy, but I'm sure you probably know a few people who are afraid of guns. 2, family situation. You may have young children who are not yet old enough to understand why mom or dad carries a gun every day. Of course, you've taught these kids the fundamentals of firearm safety, but let's be honest, some 4- and 5-year-olds are just not mature enough to grasp the concept of concealed carry. 3, privacy. The decision to always be armed is a very private decision. One of the best ways to ensure your privacy is to keep your weapon well concealed. This leads into the 4th reason, tactical advantage. Surviving a lethal encounter can often be attributed to having the element of surprise or tactical advantage. Now, if the bad guy already knows you're armed, well, not only have you lost a tactical advantage, but you'll most likely be his primary target. And the last reason for deep concealment is in the case of a backup gun. If you decide to carry a second weapon as a backup gun, you want to conceal this weapon as deep as possible, so as to eliminate the chance of it ever being discovered. If you ever do need this backup gun, you'll be glad it's there. So for these reasons, we'll spend the rest of this hour learning about my favorite 4 deep concealment methods. Let's take a quick look at each of these 4 holster systems. As we start to look at these holsters, I just want to give you a warning that these are my personal holsters, so while a few of them may look a little worn out, I can assure you from my own experience that they work. Okay, the first holster we're going to look at is an Appendix IWB tuckable holster. This holster is worn inside the waistband in the approximate location of where your appendix is, or used to be. It clips onto your belt and allows for your shirt to be tucked in right over it. This is a very convenient deep concealment holster, but there are a few things you'll want to be aware of before you go and buy one. The next holster we'll look at is the ankle holster. This holster has a thick neoprene strap that attaches around your ankle with a Velcro pad. This specific model has some sheepskin-like material to cushion your ankle. These can either be very comfortable or practically a torture machine based on how you wear them. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Next we have the shirt holster. I actually own 3 of these holsters, and this model that we'll be looking at is by far my favorite. This holster system offers excellent concealment, a place to hide 3 extra magazines, and offers practically unlimited mobility. I'll show you how great these work, but I'll also show you the biggest drawback of this system that you really ought to be aware of. Finally, we have the Smart Carry holster. This curious looking contraption is actually what I consider to be a work of genius. While it certainly does not look pretty, it works like a charm. If you look closely, you'll see that this holster is pretty well worn. I'm going to tell you all about the small adjustment I made that increased the comfort of this holster for me by about 10 times. Okay, now that I've given you a brief introduction to each of these holster systems, it's time to get down to the details. Okay, let's get started. Okay, here's where we'll get into the details of the Appendix IWB tuckable holster. Before we begin, I'm going to confirm that the gun I'll be using for these demonstrations is in fact unloaded. This Glock 36 is my personal primary carry weapon. Empty magazine well, and empty chamber. Now of course I'll still treat the gun as if it is loaded, but I certainly don't want to do these demonstrations with a loaded gun. First thing we're going to do is to look at exactly how these holsters work. Let's start by looking at my 2 examples. The first holster is the USA, which stands for Ultimate Second Amendment by Galco International. It is a horsehide holster with a nylon J-hook. You can see that hook right here. The other one I have is the Split Decision by High Noon Holsters. This one is made from a more pliable glove leather and has a heavy-duty spring steel belt clip. It goes without saying that you're going to want a very sturdy gun belt, specifically designed for carrying guns. This belt here that I have is about 1.5 inches wide, and it's actually made from 2 plies of leather bonded and sewn together. It's about 1/4 inch thick. Okay, here's how these work. With the Galco, the J-hook is going to go over the edge of your pants, and it's going to clip onto the bottom of the belt. And right in here is where your shirt is going to tuck right in. So the only thing from the front you'll see is just this small little black hook, and you can hardly see it because it's the same color as the belt. And now with the split decision from high noon, the steel clip actually clips right over onto the belt. Ideally, you might want a slightly wider belt so there's less slop here, but this would work. And right in here is where you tuck your shirt. See that big gap where your shirt tucks right in there. The features that you'll want to look for in a holster like this are: 1, you want a very sturdy belt clip. Whether this is a J-hook or a more traditional steel clip, it's really up to your personal preference. 2, you'll want the holster to have a front sight guide or some means of minimizing the chance of your front sight catching in the holster. And 3, you'll want to look for overall sturdy construction. As you can probably see here, both of my holsters have very heavy stitching. Finally, the insider tip that I'll give you about this type of holster is that while they are very convenient and do a great job of securing your weapon, driving for long distances can prove to be a little painful, and bending down to tie your shoe is rather difficult. Let's go to the demonstration and I'll show you just what I'm talking about. First one we're going to do is the Galco USA. So the easiest way to use this holster is to actually insert the gun first. So get it right in there. You don't want to put your hand on the bottom, just grab it by the side, because you never want to point the gun at any part of your body or anything you're not willing to destroy. And of course, as you're doing this, you want to make extra sure that you don't put the bottom of the holster or the gun in front of your hand. That's definitely violates one of the important rules. So I'm just going to put my thumb down here, pull open my jeans, jam the whole assembly down into my pants. And we want this J-hook to go over the jeans, crank the belt up, and then snug it nice and close to the belt loop. That kind of keeps it in place. Now from this point you can see that, geez, Tim, it really doesn't look all that concealed. Well, that's because I haven't implemented the tuckable feature yet. So now we do the shirt tuck. So I'm going to pull out this portion of my shirt. And due to that feature on the J-clip, allows us to tuck my shirt right in here. Just tuck it right in there. So from pretty much any reasonable distance, side view, doesn't really look like I'm carrying. The only thing you can really see is this tiny little hook. And because the hook is black, same color as the belt, it really disappears. Furthermore, this area of your body is really not an area of your body that a person is going to stare at or look at. Probably the two biggest drawbacks of this holster system, this in-the-waistband tuckable appendix holster, is the fact that if you're in a situation where you're driving long distances, this thing can kind of be a little bit uncomfortable. I don't know if you can see this, but right here, this is where the holster ends, so the muzzle of the gun pretty much ends right there. So when you sit down, that muzzle pokes you right in your groin. You know, for a limited amount of time, it's really not that big of a deal, but man, if you've got a 3-hour drive, that's really going to start to get to you. The other thing that's tough about this holster, you see it, got it on right here, bending down to tie your shoe. Now tying this shoe, my left foot, piece of cake. But I'll tell you, tying my right shoe, because now I've got, this gun is just jamming right in my groin here, and bending over is almost impossible. Certainly not the end of the world, but it's definitely something that you need to be aware of, just so you know exactly what you're getting into with the in-the-waistband appendix tuckable holster. Probably the best aspect of this holster is the fact that it allows for some pretty fast presentation. So while the holster is very well concealed, to get the gun, all you do is come down here with your weak hand, rip up, boom, you got the gun out just like that.